optimal minimal.
At this altitude, I can run flat out for a half mile before my hands start shaking.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Now would seem an appropriate time.
What if I did the opposite?
I'm a cybernetic organism, living tissue over metal endoskeleton.
This episode is brought to you by AG1, the daily foundational nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. I do get asked a lot what I would take if I could only take one supplement. And the true answer is invariably AG1. It simply covers a ton of bases. I usually drink it in the mornings and frequently take their travel packs with me on the road. So what is AG1? AG1 is a science-driven formulation of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food sourced nutrients. In a single scoop, AG1 gives you support for the brain, gut, and immune system. So take ownership of your health and try AG1 today. You will get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription purchase. So learn more, check it out. Go to drinkag1.com/Tim. That's drinkag1, the number 1, drinkag1.com/Tim. Last time, drinkag1.com/Tim. Check it out. Meow. Hello, ladies and germs. This is Tim Ferriss, and welcome to another episode of The Tim Ferriss Show. I'm on the road playing Road Warrior, going from hotel to hotel, attempting to do interesting things. And, of course, my job is to deconstruct world-class performers in each of these episodes. I interview many different people from various fields and try to distill what makes them great, the lessons learned, the habits, routines, etc. And that ranges from 4-star generals to chess prodigies to scientists, startup CEOs, and in this case, a world-class storyteller, Kevin Costner. Of course, I grew up loving Kevin Costner films. He is an internationally renowned filmmaker across the board, considered one of the most critically acclaimed and visionary storytellers of his generation. Costner has produced, directed, and or starred in such memorable films as Dances with Wolves, one of my favorites, JFK, The Bodyguard, remember the kitchen scene? Amazing. Many scenes in that. Field of Dreams, Tin Cup, Bull Durham, Open Range, Hatfields and McCoys, and Black or White, among many others. He's been honored with 2 Academy Awards, 3 Golden Globe Awards, and an Emmy Award. This episode also features John Baird, the author and illustrator of the novels Day Job and Songs from Nowhere Near the Heart. He is the co-developer, along with Costner, of the Horizon miniseries. Their first book collaboration is a beautiful tome. It's really quite something to behold. The Explorers Guild, a passage to Shambhala, or Shambhala. I've never known how to say that. In any case, we get into all of that and more, and this episode is really split into 3 parts. The first part explores Costner's background, lessons learned, and we dig into a lot of his specific films and roles. And I think at some point, I refer to The Big Chill as the chill like a dum-dum because I think I was just a wee bit nervous, honestly, since I've really only seen Kevin on the screen before. And he is a very, very focused man with intense eye contact. We had a great time, and I really enjoyed it, but it's weird going from screen to in-person for the first time, I gotta say. But had a great time. I hope that translates to your experience of the conversation. We had it at his home, and we touch on a lot. The first, like I said, is his background, the history. Then we get into his current projects, including the book project, among many others. And then we do the rapid fire questions that many of you are already familiar with, and those are always fun. And that's what we wrap up with. Kevin has an opportunity to get into some stories that I don't think he's really told anywhere else, and had a blast. You can say hi to him on Twitter, and he doesn't use social much, but I'm going to encourage him because he makes a couple of requests of the audience, and I'm going to point you guys to Twitter. So there are some opportunities, requests that come up here. At Modern West on Twitter. At Modern West is Kevin Costner. And please enjoy this long and broad conversation with Kevin Costner. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
I really appreciate you having me out here. This is a beautiful spot you have. I guess we're outside of Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
And this is one of my favorite parts of the world. But you did not start out here, did you? I mean, where were you born?
I was born in Linwood, California, lived in Compton in 1955 and was there for about 6-7 years, and then ended up actually moving up in this general area here between Ojai and Santa Paula. Lived on a single street, went to a one-room schoolhouse.
How many students were in that schoolhouse?
I don't know. It was like, I think the first through the sixth grade. So I don't know. There could have been 60 of us. I'm not sure. Maybe not even that many.
How did going to such a small school or growing up in that way impact you? I mean, do you think?
Well, I didn't for very long. I actually didn't like it because because of that idea that all these kids were in the school, and this, the teacher's impact could be the best it could be. I was way ahead when I went into that school, where the school I had come from in Los Angeles. I was really far ahead. And my parents picked up on that really quick. And since I was such a rascal, they thought, man, he's not doing anything. I was smart enough to keep my mouth shut about being way up on this stuff. But they moved me right out of that school really quickly back into, I think, a parochial school, which is, they don't mess around, as you know.
And so your parents were concerned that you, since you were further ahead, would kind of sit on your hands and coast through it?
I don't think they were worried about that. I think my parents, I tell you, really, a lot of people I know, they look back on their childhood and, maybe wasn't the greatest or what. Mine was pretty good. Mine was very Huckleberry Finn, if it was. And a lot of that had to do with my parents were very focused in on their kids. I mean, my dad and my mom were at every Little League game, everything, so when people aren't able to, when I've talked to people my dad never came to one thing, and probably a reason for it, but I didn't have that experience. It was, we didn't have a lot of money, but it was, my backyard was my kingdom. And when my dad got home, we went to work in it.
And I read, and I don't know if this is true, that you were raised Baptist. Is that true?
Yeah.
How did that sort of affect the lens through which you viewed the world or now view the world?
Good question. I tell you, it obviously affected it. Came up in a really conservative background. My dad's from Oklahoma, and tough guy, fist fighter, very hard-knuckled people, and came in during the Dust Bowl. If you think of Tom Joad, that's my family. They lost everything and had to come out here. So my conservative foundation was right in place. My dad would put me in my place, right in the middle of church. I could be launched right out of that seat for whatever, and then, also, when you drink the blood of Christ, it was that grape juice. And, I loved pretending it was whiskey after church was over, because they had those like little glasses
right.
that you'd see in the cowboy movies, and I'd like to just knock it back. And boy, I tell you, my dad was just a no nonsense guy about that. But I also grew up with music in the Baptist church, and so that was a real first love of mine, music. My grandmother, taught the piano. My mom was in the choir. Her sister was in the choir. So I grew up with music, was in all the little things we did, the Christmas play. So I liked singing, and eventually my mom made me take the piano lessons, so I was trained classically on piano for about 3.5 years.
Did you always maintain that practice of music, or is it something you've only revisited? I revisited.
I revisited in my 20s, because I tell you, I was always staring out the window, and I was taught to be I was taught by a teacher that wanted to train a concert pianist. So there was no boogie woogie. There was no, it was all, the closest thing I got to rock was Greensleeves. Everything else was the classics. And my mom, being in a conservative background, she goes, no, that's what the teacher wants. You don't step outside that line. And so after about 3.5 years of staring out the windows, watching everybody play ball, which is what I do, I'm a sports guy. My mom really got tired of feeling that she had pinned me down to that chair. And she said to me, you're going to be really sorry you gave this up. Because I was pretty good. I was able to transpose anything. So I really could. If they would have let me play a little rock song and some little girl would have sat next to me, I probably never would have given it up. But, no one wanted to sit next to me playing Mozart. So the music came out of the church. I'd say my conservative outlook came in it. It also probably what clouded me. I was a late learner on things because I would adopt my parents' point of view. What was talked about at that kitchen table was mine. Vietnam was going on. If you were against the war, you were bad. If you had long hair, you were bad. My brother went into Marines. So if somebody hated the Marines, I hated them. Now I was like 13 or 14. And so as I was moving into high school, I wasn't very evolved in a sense. There's nobody who would say, no, just because somebody has long hair doesn't mean they're dumb, doesn't mean they're establishment, anti-America. But in fact, that's what I saw. And I had to really fight a long time to grab onto my own ability to look at the world in a more gray way. Was there any experience or person who comes to mind early on who helped you develop that? No, but I can remember really being behind the curve a few times, because my parents would say, hey, look, you got to be able to speak your mind, in these circles, whatever you need to do. You got to, but what I found was I was speaking my parents' mind, and I was not coming off very well in a way. I was militant about things I didn't even know about. And I began to sense that I didn't have a bigger view. I had their view. And, it hasn't hurt me in my life to have a conservative view, but I'm not my eyes, the scales came off my eyes a long time ago about things. So I'm going to jump around chronologically a little bit, but before we jump beyond high school, so in high school, you were 5'2", is that right? Well, I was a sophomore. I was 16 years old, and the reason I can say that is because, when you get your license, the first thing people want to do is look at it, especially the girls, right? They want to look at your picture. And, of course, I handed my picture over, and then there it is, 87 pounds, 5'2", 16 years old. I was looking below the wheel of my Datsun pickup when I drove. I was itty-bitty. I began to, grow in my senior year and grow into college. But, I wasn't not a senior. I wasn't 5'2", but it was kind of humiliating after about the fourth or fifth girl said, hey, look at that. That's really cute, 5'2". And I took my license out. I never let anybody look at it again. Were you athletic? You mentioned the playing ball, before you hit your growth spurt. So while I played a lot, and I played till I had to come home when those street lights came on, and of course I didn't. And here come my father, dressed almost like I am right now, in blue jeans and blue shirt. He was a lineman for Edison, and when they were faded jeans, it wasn't because they were designer jeans; they were faded because they just got washed a billion zillion times. And he was as handsome as Paul Newman, I got to tell you. And he'd come looking for me, and I'd see that finger, man, and I'd like be running across the street trying to get around him to get home. I just couldn't keep certain things in my head, And you mean by that the sports? Or? I couldn't keep track of it. I was like any kid. Oh, God. He said, look, when you see those streetlights come on, you come home. Yeah. So, or when I'd go build a fort, you bring my tools back, right. Or when you take your sports stuff out, you don't leave your ball out, Right. The hammer, the saw would be left at the fort, but my dad would go down to where I'm building the fort, and back came the saw, and it was all rusty. Mm-hmm. He'd look at me and I was thinking, man, I'm a bit of a fuck up. I don't get it right. It's like, I know to bring it back, but I'm having so much fun. I was a classic 10-year-old, 12-year-old. Just, you have so much fun, you almost can't think of the consequences. Well, I think that a lot of adults then spend the rest of their lives trying to recapture that feeling in a way, right? Well, Mark Twain said it. He said, look, if a man lived his life correctly, he's never forgotten his childhood. He's never given it up. When you were 5'2", you said 87 pounds? Yeah. Wow, that is small. Did you, were you kind of a rough and tumble kid? Did you get picked on a lot? Yeah, I was really rough and tumble. I remember they asked me to go out for the wrestling team because I could get the varsity letter, right? You get a varsity letter. And I said, no, I'm going to be a basketball player, because I'd always dreamed of, doing the layups with, to the Hawaii 5-0 theme, because that's what I saw when I was a little kid. I was a good athlete, but I said, no, I'm going to be that. And they go, well, you're not going to make the varsity, at 5'2". They go, you could wrestle at 96 pounds, right? Get your varsity letter. And I thought, I don't want that. But they go, well, just go try. So I went out and wrestled the one kid that was 96. I just threw him all over the place.
Just ragdolled him.
I just, I get him I didn't get him in any classic wrestling. I got him in a headlock and he whined. He was like whining. I wasn't going to let him up. I really dominated him, but I thought, big deal. I don't want my Letterman's jacket in this sport, and I want it in basketball. And my mom promised me I'd grow. I mean, I literally was running around the house, jumping up and touching the header on every door, going, what in the hell, 5'2", cute, I can't be this, I can't. And I'd say to my mom, which you do, you go, Mom, am I going to grow? I swear to God, am I going to grow? And she goes, I promise you, you're going to. So,
And you, I had read about I guess a heart-to-heart that you had with your father at one point. I want to say in the bathtub, or you were in the bathtub. Am I getting this right? Could you describe that exchange?
That was it was an odd. I had been working up in Aspen. I have a ranch up there, and working very much like I work here, and it got to put a little bit of it into context too. A little bit. It was, my dad was a worker, and when he would try to teach us to work, it was like we'd mow the lawn and we'd be done, and at an early age, and he'd go, well, did you edge it? And you go, didn't edge it, right? So the next time we mowed it and edged it, he goes, did you wash it off? Didn't wash. He was a bit of a taskmaster in a way. So it was very difficult to get it exactly right.
Right.
A man does a job right. And a lot of that came from the Dust Bowl, because he saw when 100 guys would be in line to dig the same ditch. And he used to say to me, he said, there'd be 100 guys dig this thing if you don't dig it. So I understood that a guy had to work. That's what I was about. And I had a real big problem up on the property, and they literally watched me solve it all day long. I never stopped working. And at the end, I was actually going underwater and plugging something. I was like in that cold water up there, and he watched me.
This is your property.
This is on my property. To be honest, it was a typical day, other than the fact that something broke and I really had to fix it. It was he watched me work. And now the day was done, and I was up and I don't take baths for the most part, but I was up in my room, and I'm taking a bath. I'm really beat to shit. I'm really beat up. And the door opens, and my dad walks in. So imagine, you can go, what
the hell's going on here?
And he walks in, and I'm in the bathtub, and I don't know I'm not going to sink down, but I'm thinking maybe I don't know what it is. And and kind of like a dog who can't find a place to stand, he kind of walks a little bit in a circle and finally puts his arm on the hearth or up on the mantle. And I say that because when I designed this house, I always wanted a fireplace in the bathroom.
Yeah.
I always wanted to get out and
sounds amazing
and have the fireplace in the mantle. So he had it on the mantle, and so I'm like, look at him, yeah. And he starts to talk to me. He says, when you were young, you had all the things you wanted, right? I go, yeah, of course I did. He goes, and you never felt like there was anything we didn't provide, money. He started going down this trail of did we have enough? And he looked at me, because he was always so worried that I would go into acting. He thought, a guy should work. And I know he was unsure. And then he was able to see the success that I had. And so I wonder if he was thinking at some point, I hope I never derailed you. But nevertheless, he's going down this path. You had what you wanted. Your mom and I did the best we could. And he looked at me and he said, I never took a chance in my life. And I was almost in my own Field of Dreams moment. And it's like, there was like some tears coming down. He goes, I hope, he goes, I came out of that goddamn fucking Dust Bowl. And when I got a job, Kevin, I didn't want to lose it. I was going to hold on to that because I knew there'd always be food on the table. And I said, there was. I mean, and there was a really kind of just an amazing moment. My dad sitting there going, and I'd long since been able to take care of myself. I didn't need gas money from him when I'd go visit him. And it was just I don't know if you ever had a moment like that, but I had that. And I didn't want him to tear up. He'd given me everything that he could give me. And it was just one of those moments. And, I won't, I'll always remember that. They just want to know that they did right by you.
Do you, as a father yourself, do you has that mentality carried over to you as well? Where are you ever?
Well, I
concerned about
probably talk to my kids a little bit more than he talked to me, and I probably maybe even a little bit easier on them than he was on me. Man, he was tapping me on the shoulder in the morning and said, "Here we go. We're going to work." I don't really do that to mine. I let them see me work. They can come work side by side, but I don't know who's right. I don't know if he's right. I don't know if I'm right. You don't know till the end. I do know that early on my dad thought, "You're lazy." He'd say that to me. "You're lazy. You're not going to." And I work more than anybody I know. And maybe I have that in my head. It's not uncommon for me when I come out with the guys that are working on the property. I'm here before they are, and I work with them all day right next to them. In fact, the ones who don't even speak English go, "Is he going to be here all day?" and the other ones go, "I think so." And then later on they go, "I thought he was in the movies." Maybe he doesn't need to do that. And somebody says, "Hey, Hefe, he likes it. He likes to be out here." So, my own children, I tell my children that I love them every day. That's what I tell them. But I tell them they're special every day. But I always finish that sentence with, "It doesn't make you better." Okay? It doesn't make you better being special, because people out there, their sons or daughters, they're special. You can feel special yourself. But even if you do something that the world acknowledges, you got to really relax, because it doesn't make you better than anybody. And I need what they need to learn in life is different than what I do. I never was in a limousine until I was 28 years old. They've ridden in limousines, going with us wherever we go since they were, in diapers. So their lessons are going to be different. And part of what I anticipate for them is to be able to share their good luck. How are they going to share their good luck? How are they going to have a sense of balance? There's no book on that, but it's something I think about it and work at every day.
So I have a friend who's also on the podcast named Chris Sacca, very, very successful venture capitalist. And when he was growing up, and he does this with his kids now, his parents would put him through what he called the sweet and sour summers. So he would have some fun experience that his parents would expose him to, but then the sour was they would be required to go do not a thankless job, but a hard manual job, like cleaning, I'm making this up, like oil refinery equipment with some taskmaster that dad or mom had decided that for them to spend time with, to give them both perspectives. Do you, what are the jobs, the hardest jobs that have taught you the most?
Well, my dad was the hardest on me. You couldn't be harder than my dad. So, maybe that put me in a position to work. My dad said, if you can stay long, you just have to outwork someone. And, it was really very, very basic. So, my own outlook for my own kids is they see that I'll work side by side with somebody. There's no difference between who I'm working with.
Is there anything when you were, and we're going to come back to, actually, this is a good time to sort of shift gears a little bit with talking about acting and that entire career. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with Rumpelstiltskin?
Yeah, well, that was it was a moment in my life. I think I was in my senior year at college, the start of it, and I was in night school. And if you know anything about night school, you know that the people in night school are really serious. So the bell graph's really hard there, as opposed to a bunch of 18-year-olds, or whatever you are. If you're in night school, it's serious. Those dudes are all drinking coffee. They're all still in their suits. And I'm in an accounting class. And it's not happening for me. I know I'm not supposed to be there. I know where I'm at. I'm at the other end. I'm at the wrong end of what was going to happen when a test is taken, because I don't like it. But again, because of my conservative background, you graduate high school, you go to college, and you get a college degree, and you get a job. I wasn't really, again, very advanced in my thinking, or my eyes weren't open to the real possibilities. I mean, the greatest things I did was when I would go drive trucks or frame houses, or I worked on commercial fishing boats. I like that work. I like the exoticness of that life, or you get what you get because that's what you just earned.
Right.
And so academia was not a thing for me. And there I was, smack in the middle of it, and realizing that I was just like pulling sand down. I couldn't get out of this hole. But what do? I turn off to the teacher. I open up the little student newspaper, and I'm winging through the newspaper, which is all of 3 pages long at a college, right? And on the back of it was a play, an audition for a thing called Rumpelstiltskin on an off-campus area. And I don't know why, I just thought, audition, I'd like to try that. And, when I closed that newspaper, I listened to the person drone on. I saw the latest pop quiz, and I was last. And but what I knew at that moment, I was going to that audition the next day. I was excited about the next day. It's been a long time in my college life where I was excited about the next day. And I drove down. I almost was killed, literally doing it. I was going down the 55 freeway, which is in Orange County, and at that time the freeway hadn't been finished all the way. So stoplights were on the freeway at a certain point, like where they were going to build.
Sounds so dangerous.
And as I'm going down there, everything's fine. That's not a big problem. Except my accelerator broke and went to the floor on this old Datsun pickup. And all of a sudden, I saw the brake lights up ahead, like where those eucalyptus trees are way out there.
Yeah, a couple hundred feet from us.
Brake lights. And my speedometer's going from 60 to 70 to 80, and it's not slowing down. And I'm probably going to hit those people at about 90 miles an hour and kill them, kill myself. And and the engine is just, I don't know why it was designed that way, but the floor, like some ghost, pulled it straight down to the bottom. So I had my wits about me at one point halfway through when I realized I didn't want to die, and I threw the clutch in. And there was never such a terrible whine, but I thought, oh my God, it did engage, but the engine was revving. I was able to turn the key off, and I coasted to a stop, pulled over into the emergency lane, didn't kill anybody. I jumped out of that fucking car, hopped over that fence, and hitchhiked to my audition because I wasn't going to miss it.
Wow.
I left it on the freeway. I left it because I had some place I wanted to be. I had a place that something was going to happen. And, of course, nothing did. I wasn't good enough. I didn't have enough skill. I didn't really know about Rumpelstiltskin. I mean, I didn't know my fairy tales, okay? I figured there was a prince. I would just leave it at that. I'll go out for the prince, maybe. I had to, but I didn't get it. But my imagination started to burn about the possibilities.
And what, when you had those possibilities then in your head, what were the next steps? I mean,
next steps were to the reason I didn't get the part because I wasn't very good. I could tell the people, like in accounting, they were better than me. But I thought the difference was I didn't want to try to improve in accounting. But in acting, I thought, I'm going to go to school. I found something I think I want to learn. And so it was one night they started to have classes there. One night a week turned into 2 nights a week, turned into 3, turned into 4. I suddenly started to become the student that I wasn't in college. I went to UCLA and took 2 classes in film financing, film budgeting. I showed up for the first day of class. I had already read the book, the entire book. I wasn't in the mood to do an all-nighter. I was interested.
So at this point, you'd graduated from college at this point.
I graduated from college. I was framing houses out in Orange County. I would go, and that's how I would make my dollars. I wasn't very good, but I could work all day. If you could frame one house by yourself a day, you could get another house. But what guys were doing that were really experienced in 8 hours, I was doing in 12. So I was usually out there, and I think about this time of year because the sun goes down quickly. Guys are going home at 3:30. Sometimes they'd work in teams. Some guys could frame a house by themselves. I'd do it by myself. But I wasn't finished at 3:30. I wasn't finished at 5. And I had that pickup truck, the same one almost killed me. I'd have the lights out, and I would frame with the lights on until I was done so I could get a house the next day.
And the classes, you took the classes during during the day, or were
No,
those
at night.
Those are at night.
And then I would go. Then I would go at night, and I was. All we can say, without beating this to death in a way or boring anybody with it, it was just suddenly I was interested. I was interested in my own life the way I used to be interested in it when I was a kid, when tomorrow was exceptional. And for me, every day was exceptional when I actually realized I wanted. Now, I wasn't telling people what I wanted to do because half of me was going, who's going to believe this? Especially my dad.
So let's see. How old were you at the time? I guess.
So let's say I'm probably 20.
Yeah.
21, and in my mind, I thought, why? How come at 21 I don't know what I want to be? There's this kind of thing. I thought I was actually getting old. I don't know what I want to do. Seemed like everybody else did. I didn't have anybody to tell me to relax. Just keep moving. You're doing fine. A lot of what I got was, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And so I just, like the rat in the maze going after the cheese, I just kept going to class, kept going. I was going to graduate with a degree that I didn't care. I did care about the acting, and I started to fall in love with something. Didn't know if I was going to be able to make a living at it, but I finally got rid of the whispers in my head, which was, what are you going to be? And I thought, it's none of your business. I'm going to be what I want to be. I finally shook loose of, I guess, my parents. I mean, this is not a session about therapy, but I finally got rid of the whispers. It didn't matter. I somehow figured out, if I didn't make myself happy, I would never be happy. If I didn't pursue what was whispering to me, I would absolutely be a failure. I would absolutely be an unhappy person. And believe me, when I could articulate that, which maybe many people could, I couldn't. But when I articulated that I didn't care anymore what anybody thought about what I did, except me, all the weight of the world came off my shoulders, and everything became possible. It shifted to everybody else that they were now worried. Now they're worried, but it didn't shift. Everything for me had shifted to a place where I felt free.
How did the chill come to be?
That
experience.
Yeah. Well, that was it was the one part that Lawrence Kasdan could cast without permission from the studio. He'd already done Body Heat, and people recognized it was special talent. And a casting director named Wally Nacita, who was a very tough casting director, a no nonsense kind of person, who really actually helped her directors. Instead of she would offer up people that she thought. She put me up in front of him, saying that I was somebody that she thought was very good, and I was lucky enough to get the big chill. And I knew immediately that my life would change as a result of that movie. And a lot of people talk about, well, you're cut out, then, were you disappointed? I guess I had a small measure of disappointment, but none to the not anything like what I think people thought I should have. Because I realized at the moment that I was hired that somehow I was on my own yellow brick road, and that appearing in that movie wasn't nearly as important as being in it. I knew I was in it. The people I was around knew I was in it. I had suddenly found my footing that had probably taken from the point of that accounting class, probably taken 6 years, 7 years. People talk about entrepreneurs, and the idea of being an entrepreneur is being willing to do a job that nobody else wants to do,
sure.
To be able to live the rest of your life doing whatever you want to do. And so the idea, how I can correlate that a little bit, would be to try to be an actor when there's no guarantee that it's ever going to work for you, but that you're willing to really work at it for a long time, when all the other responsibilities that follow you, being married, trying to provide, but still not giving up on your dream. It sustained me. I was lucky. I was able to make it. And when I got to that point, I was a better actor I would not have been a better, I would, even though I made a check and everybody been really happy, I wouldn't have had the foundation. I had to re-educate myself. And I love the idea of educating myself.
What did, over that course of 6 or 7 years before you were cast for The Chill, what did you say to yourself to keep yourself going?
Well, it's hard because if you want to be practical, and you need to be, it's very difficult to be around people that don't see themselves clearly. So, I mean, when your parents tell you you're the fastest little runner, you believe that. But, by the time you get to the sixth grade, there's people blowing by you, and your chances of being in the Olympics, they're not good. And so somebody says, well, I'm going to make it anyway. Okay. That's a hard person to be around a little bit. But, in the world of acting, you have to say, you have to think where you would fit. So I was looking out at the landscape. Obviously, I was going to class at night, doing everything I would do, and hating everybody I saw, or being around other actors who I realized hated everybody on television that had parts. I mean, there's like bitterness among actors who don't have jobs, looking out there, and the people that do or whatever. And I was like, I didn't really feel that, but I could understand that. But as I was moving along, there was a moment in time where I actually thought I wasn't going to make it. I did. And one thing I did once I decided that I would become an actor is I didn't want to put a clock on. I
was going to ask you that.
Put a clock on things. So I didn't. But I was also a practical person. I mean, look at me. I know what time it is. And I'm starting to think, you know what? The people I'm supposedly going to be going up against are getting more parts. I was going up against Sean Penn and Nicolas Cage and Ken Wall and Mel Gibson and Richard Gere. And you can think of all the people that were already on the landscape when I actually decided that I would act. So they not only had those credits going for them before I started, some of them, they had, 20 films behind them. And so these were the parts. This was the category that I was in. And so if I would go up for a part, there'd be 4 or 5 of these names being thrown around, and they would just work their way right down. And so my chances of getting those parts weren't very good. But somewhere along the line, they started using me on certain movies, going, well, if you want too much money, we're going to go with this unknown guy. Well, who's this unknown guy? Kevin. And that I was a bit of a stalking horse for some people, to either take less money or we're going to give this good part away.
By stalking horse, you mean like a bargaining chip or
we'll go with this unknown.
I see.
We'll go with this unknown. They continued to go with the known. So I actually thought, you know what? I'm not going to be able to jump over these guys. Timothy Hutton, you can just go right down the list. But then the big chill happened for me. And, I was working as a stage manager at Raleigh Studios and for 3 years, and I would be taking cable and working late at night. And I didn't tell a lot of people that I acted because nobody wants to be around a pining actor. So I just didn't say it. But what happened was all of a sudden when I did start to emerge, Big Chill moved to Fandango, moved to American Flyers, moved to Silverado. Suddenly it seemed like it was happening very fast for some people. It's like, where did this come from? And then when I decided I would direct, which was about 2 pictures later, people thought, wow, he's moving really, really fast. What they didn't know was I had been dreaming this moment for 6-7 years before that. Then when it was starting to happen, I had already been planning for these things.
Right.
So what was fast for other people wasn't fast for me.
Well, it makes perfect sense. I mean, you hit a certain escape velocity in a sense, and then, you'd use maybe a different metaphor. I mean, you'd been cranking and cranking, got to the top of the roller coaster, but you'd been sort of thinking of that descent all along. I've heard you say that the big struggle in acting is staying loose. If you were to have the opportunity to go back to yourself, say, at the Silverado, point, what acting advice or otherwise would you have given yourself?
Well, I just wanted, I tell you that I would give myself almost the same advice as I did, which was I'm going to try to hold out for the good movies. I'm not going to just try to go to movie after movie. Maybe what I should have given myself, which is be really ready to do the sequels. At 30, I would say just be prepared to do Bull Durham 2, Tin Cup 2, Bodyguard 2. Get in the mode of making these movies later on.
What are some of the scenes that have scared you the most? And that I've heard you talk about after you've read a script and sort of picked up on the secret, right? Something you can't wait to hopefully portray or share with an audience or tell in a certain way. What are some of the scenes that come to mind that you were most scared of in any film that comes to mind?
Well, I'm usually scared of the scenes. If there's number one, there's got to be a scene in there that you really want to do, you think you can do, that you really, really want to say, that you want to be known. I guess. Listen, I remember seeing Spencer Tracy in Inherit the Wind, and and watching Gregory Peck and To Kill a Mockingbird stand up. There's your father's walk. You know what I mean? And I thought to myself, I loved McQueen and I loved Newman, and they were minimalists, and so I understood how to work with a lot of economy. I knew I would do westerns, but I was never afraid of language either. So I wasn't, I remember, I'd read a lot about McQueen and something. It's like just always ripping lines out, didn't, have any elongated anything. It was just not going to happen. Me, I wanted to have the Inherit the Wind speeches. I wanted to have those things. And I've been able to have 4 or 5 of those in my career. Had one with Black or White in the courtroom. The problem is when you see them written so well, the thing in Bull Durham, I believe, is that you realize you're also the person that can mess them up, right? You're also the person that can take a big whiff at something that was so great. And so I usually know when I'm onto something, which is when I'm a little bit afraid of it. Go, wow, I could mess this up. And I put myself there a lot of times in my life, and I've often asked myself, why have I tried so hard to be in a place where I could fail so badly in front of so many? And, I have, gone to bed at night knowing the next day I have to deliver. And if I don't, everybody else is going to know.
I'm recalling a commencement speech that was given by one of my favorite writers, Neil Gaiman, an amazing fiction writer. And it's called Make Good Art. But at one point he says, when you feel like, and I'm paraphrasing here, you're walking down the street naked, extremely uncomfortable about what you're about to say, then you might just be getting it right. Along those lines. When you're tackling a scene, like the I Believe, say in Bull Durham, how do you prepare for that? How do you practice beforehand, or how do you?
Well, I never thought that I did that scene as well as it could have been done. The writing there was so great. I just did the best I could, and I had a great director in Ron Shelton, and launched me in another movie called Tin Cup. But how do you prepare? Like, let's take the scene in JFK. Which was about 11 pages long. It was a really intense thing, and I started on that probably a month and a half, 2 months before we ever started filming. I'm really slow. I can memorize, I think, as well as anybody, but I can't perform with memory. I have to perform when I actually own the words, and I can do them in any state. And so to do that, I know that I have to get off book, which is a term for, I don't need the script anymore. I do that before every movie. I'm off book. I don't trust myself to learn lines the week of, the night of. I just don't do it. And it's kind of anal, but for me, it makes me more prepared to step through what I call a window of opportunity if one presents itself on the set that day. A lot of people, they go, no, I'll just wing it. I like being fresh. I like being, open to the spontaneity. I would never trust the work that I do to that. And I would never, I couldn't do that to a movie I was working on. I wouldn't trust myself. I think going in really prepared makes me really confident to do anything that happens that day. I'm not just stuck there. I'm just prepared to do that.
Well, it seems also that your familiarity with the material allows you to make some very intelligent suggestions. You brought up JFK. I mean, let us suppose, maybe you could explain the conversation with Oliver Stone.
We did. Oliver comes under a lot of scrutiny. He really has a really active mind, and is really, a patriot in his own way after a truth, and he's willing to go at it very, very hard. And people have questioned him on it, and the directions he goes down, the roads the rabbit holes he's willing to go down, and what gets said and who said it. And I knew I was going to be the voice of all this, and as I was going through that script, I wanted to serve Oliver, but I also wanted to serve myself a little bit too, which was to make sure that I wasn't so far out on the limb saying explicitly, what Oliver is saying. And when I came to certain things that I was unsure about, and some other people questioned it a little bit, I said to Oliver, I'm not comfortable with saying this. I said, I would be more comfortable saying, let us suppose, as opposed to this actually happened. Because the let us suppose is framing things for people to see. Because if there's no actual eyewitness there, you go, let us suppose this happened. And Oliver didn't fight that at all. To his credit, he said, that's fine. Let's just paint that picture, because that's the picture I believe that's there. Because you could turn and say, and now let us suppose that didn't happen. Boom. And you go down that thing. And I thought it was a fair depiction. And I was proud of Oliver. Instead of fighting that, no, we're going to say that's fact. It is fact because this guy said it was. And I said, well, let's just think about that a little bit. It was a good collaboration.
You mentioned something, that Oliver, I hope he doesn't burn himself up. What did you mean when you
said what?
I hope he doesn't burn himself up. I hope he hears this.
I don't know where I said that, but that's just one friend to another, one colleague to another. And listen, we all burn pretty hot and bright and go pretty hard. And, I don't need to let people know anything more than that, other than this is a guy that was good to me. I know he plays hard, and I know he works really hard, and I want to see him have as long a life as he possibly can and do the work that means a lot to him. So I'll just kind of let it go at that.
And the reason I ask is, quite frankly, because I think that it's out of personal interest. I mean, you've had a very long career and you've lasted. I feel like I burn the candle at both ends quite often, particularly when I get immersed in a creative project and can't kind of pull back to 30,000 feet. Do you feel like you've ever been at risk of burning out? I mean, you've had some, for instance, Waterworld, massively long shoot, right? What do you do, or how have you contended with that if you've had to?
Well, I was also going through a divorce, which was something that I didn't see happening to me, kind of from a conservative point of view, how you're raised, that you think, well, this is how it's going to be the rest of your life. And you kind of know even before that it wasn't really working that way. But all the planets lined up with this incredibly long movie, a very tough thing. And I actually went through that entire movie divorced, separated, and then divorced before the movie started. People don't know that. They happen to think that somewhere halfway through that happened. It didn't. I was going to work every day with feeling a bit like a failure. But to me, I just go back. You put your head down, you keep working, and you keep doing the very best you can, and you don't let the people know around you that your heart's on the ground. But my life is so much more than acting. So I've never, I stop sometimes because I just want to stop, not because I have to stop. Please, it's not like I'm, I remember in college when we do like Black Beauties, you just be up all night, just somebody needs to come in and stop me, you know what I mean? And I didn't have that. I have my own governor. and I have my own energy level, which might not be the same as somebody else who's I think you need to slow down. I kind of know when I need to.
Got it. You have some type of limiter.
Yeah, and I have other interests that actually almost force that.
Right.
I have my own seasons as a man, so to speak. I got to go hunting. I got to go fishing. I got to be back for Little League. I got to, I have these things that are important to me and important to my family.
This is a bit of a non sequitur, but I'm so curious because I've spent just a little bit of time in Aspen, doing some work with the Aspen Institute. And, I bumped into somebody at one point and they're like, you know what? I actually bumped into, and this could be totally false, but they're like, I walked into this bar in Aspen and Kevin Costner was bartending. Have you ever bartended in a bar in Aspen or anything like even as
I have friends that bartend. Maybe I jump back to help them for a second.
Okay.
But I haven't, I don't know how to make change, My nightmare is when something costs $8, and they, or something, and I give them a certain amount of money, and the guy goes, "Can you give me 10 more cents or something like that?" And I go, "No, I'm only giving you."
It's like PTSD after accounting class.
Yeah. It's like, please don't do that to me. My temples start to pound, and it's like, hey man, why are you asking for more money or something? Because you want to make life easier on me. You're not. You're humiliating me. Stop. I literally kind of throw the money down on the counter and just walk out. It's like some reflex, don't have me do math at the chalkboard.
Yeah.
I had this little creep I was in fourth grade, and you know how sometimes the teachers will tell you, hey, the fifth grade teacher needs you to take this note over, right? Well, if I look back in my life, I've got a very, very sound life. But if I really look back at it, I do have moments where I have real problems as a result of certain things. You just don't realize it. And I remember I would go to I'd go to the fifth grade class, and there was this little prick. His name was Mr. Chapman, and he was short, and he had a flat top like a Marine, flat top, and he wore a bow tie. All right, so he
sounds like a handful already.
So prick already, right? And so I walked in, and I brought the paper, and he goes, "What are you doing in class?" And I go, "Oh, we're doing clay or something." He goes, "Well, we're doing math here. We're doing." Whatever kind of math. Oh, that's really great. He goes, why don't you show us the math you know how to do?
Oh, God.
Can you believe that? This guy would do this to a fourth grader, and he would have me try to do their math, and he laughed at me.
Oh, what a mess.
And the kids laughed.
Yeah.
And I remember that teacher told me another time, can you take this over to Mr. Chapman? I go, no. And she said, look, you just have to do this for whatever reason. I wasn't able to say no to her either. Again, maybe that's that conservative background. Into that class I went. Chapman, this little prick, did the same thing again. He humiliated me, and he allowed his fifth graders to laugh at me. Ugh. And I, believe it or not, I could never go to the chalkboard again without that fear of being laughed at. So the truth was, I could go to the gas station now and give the guy the money, and he goes, give me an extra dime and I'll make this even on you. And that's the chalkboard to me. Huh. It's the chalkboard. And that guy was cruel. That guy shouldn't have been a teacher. Somebody should have jerked him on his ass and said, you don't talk to anybody like that. You don't humiliate anybody, let alone a kid lower grade coming into your class just to give you something. There was something really wrong with him. I probably conjured that story up for the first time, probably about 10 years ago, telling somebody about it. And because I always wondered why everything would go into a fog with me when I would go up to the chalkboard. I couldn't follow the directions that anybody was saying to me. They go, this is really simple. It wasn't simple to me. Why? Because I couldn't hear it. My brain was pounding.
That's horrible. I mean, it's incredible how that sounds very sadistic.
It's wrong, I mean, I've got this life, where I have this fame, worldwide fame. Somebody's listening, probably going, Jesus Christ, this, we're all bruised in this world.
Yeah,
we've all been kind of. That wasn't, not the kind of abusive home, thank God. It wasn't, somebody said, hey, gee, Kev, that's pretty mild. I would agree with you. But nevertheless, you realize if you take that and see how it affected me, and then maybe add on heaps of the stuff that happens to other children, my God, we really can ruin people.
And it could just be an off the cuff remark. I mean, I remember my mom, for instance, at one point was in a music class, I think it was, singing, and the teacher said, "Yeah, you should just stop singing." Or it was some like off the cuff remark. Maybe that teacher was just having a bad day, whatever it was. But my mom has carried that throughout her entire life.
Exactly.
That she can't sing or she shouldn't sing. And I had a similar experience with a math teacher in high school. Just was constantly kind of heckled or needled in this class. And so my choice of college was partly determined by where I wouldn't have a math requirement.
Right. No, I tell you, and so we understand how we affect people. And that's followed me with my whatever fame I carry around the world, that I know I come into contact with people and there's a moment that I can have an impact on them. Mm-hmm. It's very with me.
How have you learned to contend with, I mean, for instance, and I mean, this is just in my small, like, startup world space, but I'll have people who like come up to me, I'm at a urinal, and they'll come up and want to like pitch a startup behind my head at a urinal. How have you learned to contend? Because it must be difficult for you to go out to a lot of public places, I would imagine.
I go anywhere I want. Okay. I tell you the problem, because I never wanted my kids to be limited. Oh, daddy can't go here because daddy's too famous. I tell you where I can't go very well is to the bars, because there's alcohol. When there's alcohol, people get loose. They get too free. They say things, and under the guise of it or whatever, and a girl will say something, and somebody will say. So that's not a good place for me, to be honest. And I'm not a drinker, so it's not really a loss for me. The other place that's more difficult is like Disneyland, where people think you're part of the ride. But I go to both places, regardless, because if my friends are there, I'll go, and I'll make sure that my kids go to Disneyland. I have determined to not let fame affect them.
So you mentioned you have many different interests. One I'd like to touch on before we talk about some more recent projects is directing, and specifically Dances with Wolves, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, as a side note. But could you describe how that got started and your interactions with Michael Blake?
Yeah, you mean the story of it being written, the whole thing?
Well, specifically, what I was thinking of is sort of how Dances with Wolves started up on a wall.
Oh, yeah. Well, Michael, and we've lost Michael. Michael passed away. Michael was a real total child of the 60s. He was on the newspaper staff. He was against the establishment. He was with Jane Fonda. Just imagine everything. Berkeley, the long hair, the whole thing. But Michael was really after the truth. But then Michael got to a point where he wanted, as we moved into the 70s and, wanted to write screenplays, wanted to write books. He did write books, but he really wanted to write screenplays. And that's how we met. And in a little downtown off the L.A. River near the Coors, the Coors plant used to be down there, and there was this chemical plant, and that's where Michael slept. And we met, and there was an acting group that none of us had to pay any money, and it was a very eclectic group of people, a lot of rock and roll people, a lot of screenwriters, people wanted to direct, people wanted to produce, and so we could all do what we wanted to do every night, which was act, and which was hear our own writing. And at one point, the Big Chill thing happened, and I started to emerge. So I was the one person in the group that started to emerge, and things started to go well for me. And so I was quickly dragging along my friends, if I could, get them interviews, and Michael was one of those. And I got Michael 8 or 9 interviews that I could never get when I was struggling, and every one of them went south. Every one of them, I'd get a phone call. Michael insulted us. Michael told us we don't know what we're doing. You don't know good writing. And so those calls were getting very difficult for me because I was trying to help him. And pretty soon some of the people I was sending him to were actually as good a friend to me as he was. And so now he insulted them. And so I was losing patience with him and losing patience with him really putting down Hollywood and everything and putting this down. And somewhere along the line, I mean, I'm shortchanging this because I don't want to bore the audience, but he really crossed the line with me and said something about some people and about this. And I kind of was letting him know, Mike, maybe the writing's not good enough right now. I just get this. And then he said one more thing. And the next thing you know, I had my hands on him and I had him up against the wall. He had really crossed a line with me. And basically what I said, well, then quit. I said, quit pretending you want to be in Hollywood, because everything you're writing is ending on page 120, which is code for a screenplay, is about 120 pages. And I said, why don't you start writing things that mean something, like a short story or a long story, something that ends on 88 or 188 or 888, and quit trying to write these. And I literally had him off the ground, and there was scripts under his feet, and I kicked them, and they went dramatically sliding like a deck of cards out there. And now I let him down. And I said, why don't you quit pretending this thing you want to be and you actually hate. I thought really our relationship was over there because I'd put my hands on him, and that would be hard for me to come back from. And, but Michael, 3 weeks later, says to me, typical writer, goes, I don't have any place to live. And so I said, well, all right, come live at our house. And he started, and every night I would come, he goes, I'm writing something. And he goes, you want to hear it? And I go, no. And every night he goes, I'm writing. Can I read what I said, no.
Why did you say no?
Because I was sick of him. I'd almost beat him up.
Yeah.
And so now I'm having to look at him, have cereal in my house and everything in the morning and at night. And I got one spare bedroom of a house I bought. And my wife's even beginning to wonder about him. And she's saying to me after 2 months, hey, he's down there reading to our kids in his underwear. So my kids are like 5 years old. They can't understand this story he's reading. And I said, Michael's fine. There's nothing going on down. She goes, well, I'm not so fine with it after about 2 months. So I say, Mike, you're going to have to go finally. So Mike goes and spends a little bit of time at another one of my friends for about 3 weeks, and now he's done. And he gives me this manuscript, and I said, he goes, I hope you read it. I go, I'm not sure I'm going to. I was pissed at this guy, but I'm also a softie, right? I let him live with me. And I just didn't want anything to do with him for a while. He was bugged me so much. And so he split. He went down to Bisbee, Arizona, and worked at a Chinese restaurant, washing dishes at night and then killing raccoons in the day at this ranch. And he would call me up and say, did you read my thing? I said, no. And this went on for about 3 weeks. Then I get a letter. He goes, I'm cold. And I said, ugh. And so I'd send him down sleeping bags and some Coleman stoves. I sent him some stuff. And he goes, did you read my thing? I go, no. One night I pick it up about 4 months later, 5 months later. And I start reading, and I read it all that night. It was Dances with Wolves. And I was really proud of him. I was really, really proud with him, because when you live in this town, there's people always giving you things, giving you their last best work. This is my best work. And so you're honored to be able to read somebody's thing, but you're also in the position of having to turn around and tell them if you like it or not. And that can really take the air out of somebody. So unbelievably, Michael, I was right not to try to listen to any of his stuff. I didn't want to edit any of his stuff. I didn't want to influence it. I wanted him to go till he was done. And it just took me, 6 months to read it. And it was Dances, and I was really proud. And I called him up. I said, I'm going to make this into a movie. I said, I don't know how I'm going to do it, because I didn't have that kind of money. I said, but I'm going to do it, and you're going to write the screenplay. And I'm going to pay you more than you've ever been paid. I'm going to find out what the Writers Guild is, instead of working for $3,000 for all these goombas in town writing, low budget films. I said, I'm going to find out. It was like, I don't know what it was, $27,000. And I went and figured out how to get $27,000 and paid Michael. I said, let's do this. And we made that movie about 2 years later, and Mike won the Oscar.
It's such a fine movie. Was it originally titled Dances with Wolves?
Yeah.
It was, right from the beginning.
Yeah.
How long did he give it to you, in basically novel form, or what?
Yeah, it was all written out in manuscript. It was about as thick as a phone book. But when you mashed it down, it was, I don't know what it was, 200 pages. I'm not sure.
And how did you end up directing that movie? Was it your intent?
Well, I actually went out to 3 really important directors. I'm not going to use their names. I know that would be interesting, but they were the top of the heap guys. And all of them had things that they wouldn't do to the movie. Some would get rid of the opening Civil War sequence. Some thought it was just too long. Somebody thought that probably it shouldn't be a white girl, that seemed like a cliche. And I said, well, it really wasn't on the frontier. What people were traded. There was a lot of that going on. And so once I got past them, I thought to myself, I think I should direct this. And I'll probably, going back to our earlier in our discussion where you talked about were you ever afraid? I really had a good script. I knew it. I worked with Mike. In fact, Mike said, man, he didn't have a lot of fun working with me on the script. He said it was like having to clap because I made him rewrite himself till we got it right. Because I would look at him and I said, well, look, you're either going to write it or I'm going to do it. I think you should do it. Because Mike never rewrote himself after that, and he never had another produced screenplay. But
So that was his only produced screenplay?
Own produced screenplay. And I was not hard, but I knew when it was working in my mind, and when I didn't think it was working, I knew we had to fix that. And it just came back to either you're going to do it or I'm going to do it. And I said, I think you'd be wise if you did it. Then you would always be able to say, it's yours. And he did. And, that's how that happened.
What mistakes did you make early on directing, if any come to mind? Or what lessons learned?
I think I thought I had to make up my own shot list every day. So I'd be, working late at night after a long day of like how I would do the shots. And I don't, I had Dean Simler, I had this really world-class cinematographer. And I think I made a mistake worrying about that aspect of it, because if look at directing is kind of like, unless you don't, unless you watch a lot of porn, it's like you kind of, you don't really know how other people make love, right? You don't know how other people direct.
I was wondering where that was going.
I didn't know how other people directed.
Right.
I'd only been on a few movies.
Right.
So I wasn't sure how I was supposed to direct, but I had my own idea about how, but it's like, so if you don't see anybody do it, how do you know if you're doing it right?
Yeah.
You
reference.
you kind of like, maybe maybe you'll edit that out. You're just, how do you know?
No, it makes perfect sense.
You're kind of trying to your own way. I actually direct sometimes with a chalkboard, and that has a lot to do with my own athletic background. Sometimes when I have really big scenes, I'll pull out a chalkboard and I'll look at somebody because a lot of times they'll be doing what you're doing, which is they're giving me some chin boogies like that. But what I realize is they're afraid. The actor's afraid, and he's going like this. He's me at the chalkboard when I'm in the fourth grade.
He's nodding, but
he's not
nervous.
hearing me.
Right.
So when I go out to do a really big explosive take, and he's supposed to be somewhere, and he's like over there, and I go, "Hey, what happened? I was looking right at you," and he's going. So a long time ago, I go, wait a second. Maybe he's a visual guy. Maybe he's basically his head's bobbing up and down because he's saying, please don't look at me. Please don't talk to me. So I found that chalkboard helped a lot of people. They physically understood.
And would you use the chalkboard to storyboard, or what would you be doing?
No, mostly in big action sequences where you got to be here, you got to be there.
Like
I wouldn't use a chalkboard in a sit around thing, but I would find that when I had to communicate with a lot of people,
got it. So almost like a football play. I mean, you have the X's and the circles.
This is what's going to happen, and I go, you don't forget if there's a shooting and you're over here, you're going to have to be ducking your head. You're going to. I need for you to be doing that. Don't. And so it's like that. I think I compensated for how I learn with other people.
So you have.
I mean, there was other mistakes. I think when I finally when we kill the one Native American, the Pawnee, in the finally in the river, they're chasing him down the river. I think I wouldn't have gotten such a circle around him. I think I would have just had them look and then pour in on him. There was a moment though where they were glad they caught him. I just felt like the circle was too much. It was just too perfect. I just thought there was this kind of thing where he realized he couldn't run anymore. They look, and then they just descend on him. So I look at that and I think that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that.
Such a great movie. I was really struck by it. I only saw Dances with Wolves for the first time a few years ago. I was becoming very interested in the Lakota Sioux and looking at a lot of sort of Native American heritage and mythology and whatnot. But anyway, I mean,
That movie was different than a lot of movies in the sense that was a journey movie. It wasn't a plot movie. It's like, how are we going to rob the bank? Well, you get your crew, you get your plan, and then something starts to go wrong with your plan. And, it was you didn't know where the movie was going. And I think people were able to just go for the ride.
oh, well, just the entire transformation of the protagonist throughout the movie. You don't need the extra kudos, but it had a real impact on me. So thank you for helping to put that out into the world. You have so many different interests, like you mentioned. You have the longstanding interest in music. You have obviously the acting and the directing. Very manually literate. I mean, you know how to work with your hands, framing houses, etc. And I'm holding here in my left hand, this is the Explorers Guild. And this is sort of a book after my own heart in a way. This is a thick tome. But why writing and why the Explorers Guild? How did this come together?
Well, it came together. It's not how it wasn't on my agenda to do this. As I go through my life, I'm always really open to meeting people, and since there was a writer and a couple of his friends wanted to meet me, and I was told that he was very, very talented, but that they wanted to meet me at some point and talk about some story ideas that they might have had, and I had a level of trust in the person that told me they were good and that kind of thing, and I like my mind's always open to things. So we met not with the idea that we were going to write a book. I was going to listen to what they had to say, and that person was John Baird, and we met at the Four Seasons. Actually, John's with us. I mean, you were nice enough to invite him in and let him be part of this.
Of course.
Hey guys, thanks for letting me crash.
Yeah.
Although, I think I can be a more effective salesperson sometimes when I'm out of the picture. But thanks for having me anyway.
Of course. No, I'm just so curious how something of this magnitude manifests.
Yeah,
because so I'd just love to hear you expand on what happened at the meeting and then what followed after that.
Well, he came in and kind of had this idea that I couldn't get my arms around really what he was saying. And,
a lot of that.
Yeah. There was a thing, anybody has hard sometimes on a cold meeting to get traction, and John was having trouble getting traction. And, but it turns out he was, in his favor, the story he was talking about was pretty elaborate. Mm-hmm. But so it was like, how do you do that really, really quickly? And I couldn't get my arms around it. I said, why don't we talk the following week? You come up to Santa Barbara. We won't be in the Four Seasons. We'll be in my backyard. And, I have to admit that the story was still a little bit unclear. I think John was still working it.
Strike two.
But I had a bigger feeling about who this guy was. And I thought, I want to be around this guy, John Baird. And
what gave you that feeling?
I can't always say it. I can't always articulate it, but you feel you're around somebody that has a different voice, it thinks in a different way, as a wicked wit. And, it was just, I believe the story was there underneath the stuttering.
So John, maybe you can tell me, because obviously there are two sides to this story, right? It's kind of like the Rashomon of the birthing of a book. So why did you want to meet Kevin?
Well, I'd like to tell you that we had some really well worked out plan, and it was just a question of communicating it to him. I think we had a general idea of a secret society of explorers. We thought that this would be a gateway to just innumerable stories. And we were presenting it as a kind of throwback to that classic epic adventure storytelling. And, given an opportunity to meet with someone of Kevin's stature, of course we wouldn't say no, but the fact is, he has, what we discover is he's sort of a fan of those same old classic stories that we actually love. And so, things kind of took off from there. We both found that we love that big canvas storytelling. We love the idea of, secret parts in the world and hidden histories, and the collaboration took off from there. But I think that, he is not mischaracterizing our first couple of meetings at all. And it had less, I think, to do with being starstruck and more just, this is a very anti-Hollywood story. We didn't have an end game. We didn't have even a format that we liked. I had a couple of sketches, a couple of storylines, a couple ideas.
Right, it wasn't Aliens meets Die Hard, or
no, I 100% downkill. 'Cause it was my pitching is today is still terrible. And I don't know if that was part of maybe the allure for Kevin, because this wasn't something that was presented to him fully formed by any stretch. It just had some elements and some things that I think he may have sparked to, and it was always going to be something that we formed together.
Mm-hmm. And then, so when did you decide to actually pull the trigger and work together on this?
I think it was that second time, or did you come up one more time?
Well, and again, to Kevin's credit, we were recording in a place right now, and it was maybe 5 feet from where we're talking. And he said, "Yeah, you know what? I still really don't get this, but let's do it." And it, as a testament to, you probably heard him as he's recreating some of his biggest successes, and people always see him when the rock is rolling down the hill. That's the part they see. What they don't see is all the pushing and he's pushing it downhill, no mistake. But I think by the time people see him, it's, you kind of think he's got it pretty easy. I've been witness, myself now to this is 8 or 9 years ago when we met. And, there was just all kinds of, all sorts of misfires, all sorts of, trying some things, then scrambling back, reformulating, trying it again. Before about 4 years ago, we sort of, I came to him saying, look, let's just do this as the book. Okay.
So initially was the plan to do a whole collection of multimedia properties, or was it intended to be a film initially and then decided to be, in this iteration, the book?
Well, it was always a book. That's my background, in sort of minor books. But, we think that the story, the structure of it is so expansive, it lends itself, I think 360-degree media was a popular thing at the time, perhaps still is. And we saw a lot of opportunity there. I think we tried animating it for what could have been, in these very small chunks. Kevin put some of our smaller animations together and thought, maybe we'd go from a web series, or maybe this is an animated TV series or something like that.
It was really cool. We did animate it, and everything I saw about it is, once we started working, I just picked up the momentum of loving it. And, we talked earlier about some of my films that I haven't done the sequels to. I saw this as something that had innumerable stories. It just was it was big storytelling. It was big canvas. So I thought to myself, gravity's going to just fall right to everybody's going to come right to our door. This is what people are looking for. And so we did this. And I think John's, alluding to the fact that no, people didn't. They wanted to know, well, who's the boy in it? And, there is a little boy, and could he have a magic watch? Make him fly? Because our boy doesn't have a magic watch or fly.
The lesbians.
Yeah, we could get a lesbian in here too. And so we said,
are these Hollywood people giving this feedback?
Well, John heard those versions, and I heard the magic watch version, which is, we can put them in because they exist in the world, but maybe not in our world in this particular moment. So we think our boy's better off having a hole in his head than having a watch in his pocket.
Watch. Lesbians.
So what happened was it didn't work. And then we went on, and we kind of, that was probably 5 years ago, and we stopped. And, I think John felt that I was humiliated by all the no's by executives. I wasn't. But I appreciated him. That's the only time I ever saw John get really mad. He goes, these people shouldn't be saying no to you. And I needed to look at him and think, well, who am I, John, other than a storyteller? They can say no. It is what it is. But I loved his defensiveness for me, but we stayed the course. We went off and wrote a Western together, and John came back and said, I'm going to write the book because that's my background. And I said, go, man, go.
And, so this is a beautiful book. I mentioned before we started recording that I wanted to be a comic book penciler for a very long time. Aesthetically, how did you think about putting together the book? Because it's clearly very, very consciously decided. I mean, the paper stock, the tint of the paper. I mean, it's just a physically beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I have a long background because, as you might know, writing books is not a great way to make a living. And, though I had a couple, I had to support myself doing other things. And I was always an art director and a designer and wanted to be an illustrator. And I had a lot of experience in not just design, but right through press. I got very into cause I really like the sort of ins and outs of paper stock and printing techniques and finishing techniques. So the two things I had done before this, though they didn't find much of an audience, they were same thing, very carefully done. Each page was, well thought through, and this always is going to have a graphic element in it. Before we leave the idea of Kevin just sort of saying "Go man, go" on the book, it's true that was the initial brief. Where we'd kind of ping pong some story for many years, and then when it came format wise, he was doing his things, and I was going to run off with the book. It started that way, but the thing I really always need to say, because I think people will make certain assumptions when they see there's a celebrity, someone of Kevin's stature and someone who's, me, I think the thought is probably that here's a guy who's probably reading it along with the rest of America and wanted to sort of show up when it's on press, make sure his name is in the right place. This was really, he may have started in more of a backseat role on it because this was a book and not a film and because it was something I brought to him. But as pages started coming in, it was very natural for him just to slip into it like he has, on any other project. And I mean, it started in a general way, kind of shaping it like you would bounce material, but then he's bringing characters and storylines and dialogue, and then he's, page by page with me, always making time, knocking these out, getting through it. And at a certain point, it was no longer something that was mine that he was giving input on. This was ours, and we were collaborating on it.
What would a jam session look like? In other words, to organize those inputs and try to synthesize it. This is something I've always been fascinated by because I've never had a writing partner, which I quite frankly envy a lot. And I've come to know a lot of comedy writers who work in film, and they're almost always at least a pair. In this particular case, how did you guys collaborate and sort of capture and decide then what would be drafted?
Yeah, and there's a third component too, as you kind of alluded to. I didn't illustrate this thing myself. It's way beyond my talents and certainly my endurance. There's a guy named Rick Ross who is the major part of making this book what it is. We joke like we'd like to characterize it for you as like a sort of an extended keyboard that we're both kind of jamming on in our berets. My process is very, very solitary, generally. And I think, probably a lot of people who hack their way through, especially this kind of writing, it starts in just a room, alone. And, there were long stretches like that. But the rewarding part for me was getting to bring product up here. Kevin, I think it has a little more of a kinetic type of process where, I think it's the actorly directorial sort of mindset where he envisions sort of living in these people, and he can sort of from character to character, and he knows how certain people would act and how certain people wouldn't. He knows where he wants things to lead and how best to get there. And so, where I might be following up on his ideas from last time and bringing them up in a certain form, he would kind of springboard off of that. And then it was kind of following him around and burning through notebooks while he just goes. So that it was very different from what I am used to doing, but it was sometimes very hard to keep up.
Did you capture that flow of ideas in, say, a single Word document, on a board, on paper? How did you capture and then process?
I'll occasionally come up because something like this, there are just storylines on storylines and wheels within wheels, and it's every once in a while, even just for me, I need to whiteboard it, and he always sort of takes shots at me for being sort of an egghead, but he's always very indulgent. No, I'll go with this. Now bring up some sort of chart or something that will go through. But mostly it's sort of theater of his mind. And, I can kind of be there, sort of rolling with it and trying to get what I need out of it and sort of, give and take some of that. So mostly it's really just conversations.
There would be a level of point by point thing. Sometimes if, I would have to write down everything that I'm thinking about what I was actually thinking about, and that would go to him. And then sometimes out of that, when we come up, then we would really begin to riff because it's made up of 5 books. People call them 5 chapters. We call them 5 books, and we would advance down the line, even though we were in book 2. Sometimes we would be dealing with what was going to happen in 4 and 5 and actually then circle back to something else. So it was like that. Sometimes it's written down. Sometimes it's on my feet. And,
what do you mean by that? I got it.
on my
Improvised, sort of.
Well, not improvised,
improvised, I
not
apologize.
improvising, but trying to break it down. It's John's voice, absolutely, and I think it's really appropriate that when you talk about the book and you look, it was really important that John's name stand alone up top there. That was very important to me. I had a lot to do with the cover and versus what was on it versus what is, what people wanted. Rick Ross and I, we always wanted to be a part of something that could stand the test of time. When you talk about these books, Kipling, Jules Verne, Robert Louis Stevenson, Mark Twain, Conrad, the kind of books that have that heft that sit up on the shelf. That's what we wanted. Mm-hmm. Now, whether we got there or not is nearly as important as what it was we wanted to do. I liked the idea of taking something off the shelf that has the heft of this, actually having to blow the dust off it. And that's what this book is. This book is almost an heirloom for me, a book that who reads this goes, I'm going to pass this down to my little brother, my little sister. I'm going to get this book for them because there hasn't, where are these books? I mean, we're looking in our last century and the century before for our classics. Who's writing them for us now? That's what we wanted. That was our love of it. And so I brought, I guess the love of that to the characters that I liked in this and, where we wanted to go with them. But only John writes in this specific way. I can't write the way he writes. Mm-hmm. I can see my stories in there, but I can't see them as beautiful as how John has written them.
And who's the target audience? Like, who is your sort of ideal reader or type of reader? Who would like this book? What type of person? What type of reader?
I think we're not always the best equipped. I think, I'm sure our marketing gang at Simon & Schuster at Atria Books, who've been really excellent partners too, might have a real good spiel for you on the demo for this.
But when you were writing it, who was in your...
I think that's exactly it. I think when we were, like anything, and especially when you're talking about 4 years of just, there's not going to be any feedback from the world while you're doing it. You really have to be doing it to please yourself. And that was, I think one of the things that set me loose most was Kevin saying, look, ultimately, we're not going to judge the success of this by units sold or where it goes in the world, if it makes a big movie or not. Don't worry about the movie. Don't worry about all that stuff. Worry about doing something that's meaningful to us, that he says, like he said, like that can sort of sit on the shelf. I mean, this is a big statement. I don't necessarily say we delivered on it, but the aspiration was always sit on a shelf with Melville, Robert Louis Stevenson, Conrad Kipling, try to hold a place up there. And if we feel like we're at least trying for that, and we feel like we're being honest to the ideas that we have and true to that, we're going to reach, maybe not everybody, but the people we do reach, those 10%ers who feel it and who are going to feel like this was really written for me. I've been waiting for something like this and it hasn't been in the market. That's going to be our success.
I you can quantify, you can actually put an age. Okay, a 12-year-old. A 12-year-old who's pretty, really wants to get with it, who loves reading. But 6-year-olds are going to become 12-year-olds. So when we were also doing the book, there was a notion of, well, can we simplify the language? Can we, I don't want to use the word dumb it down, but there's I don't know how else to explain it. What do you mean simplify it? Yeah. This is how we want to talk. Because when you think something's going to travel through time, people are going to find it.
Yeah.
And they find it when they're appropriate. Look at when you make Bull Durham or you make Tin Cup, there's R to it. Okay. So the 12-year-old can't see it, but when he's going to see it.
Right.
So there's something about trying to be true. The problem that we deal with, I think, in the world artistically is that everybody's got this little meter on their shoulder, something like go faster, or somebody's like, a pace. It's going too slow. When we decided that we were going to make a book, we weren't going to have anybody tell us how to do it other than how we felt about it. And we felt that this could become perhaps a classic in our own time.
So this is not maybe directly related, but for you, Kevin, after all of the accolades, the awards, the box office success, how do you continue to develop yourself as an artist? How do you think about that?
I just move towards the things that interest me. And if I get really interested, if I'm not doing a movie and I'm really interested in Little League, I'm going to do Little League with my kids in the spring, and I'll be really interested. I move towards the things and towards the people that interest me, and story usually has a bit of a attachment to almost all of those things. The poetry of telling a story.
What, John, for you, what type of fiction or nonfiction writers have most influenced your thinking about storytelling?
I think we mentioned a few of the canon. When we talk about sort of more recent comparables, we, just generally to kind of put this in a framework for people, go to Raiders of the Lost Ark. But what we're really doing is drawing from the same well that those guys drew from, which is, that specific was probably more the H. Rider Haggard books, the King Solomon's Mine, the Alan Quartermain Mysteries. But, so for me, they're the Treasure Island, Moby Dick, like all these classics filtered through kind of Thomas Pynchon. You'll see that kind of layering and sort of creeping into a surrealism toward the end that I always dug in him. But I think there's a reason that those stories of Conrad and Kipling stay evergreen, and they may be thought of now as kind of required reading. But I think our idea was there's a reason why these stories still thrill us today. And if we can, as Kev says, well, more metaphorically blow a little of the dust off it and bring it to a new audience, we felt that there was that would succeed. There's also just, parenthetically, when you mentioned the graphics, that was another decision too of, I think, because what you'll see when you open it is it's a little bit of a hybrid between a traditional novel and not just an illustrated novel, but a paneled sort of graphic novel. And that put, sort of, I think was a little more of a problem than we would have anticipated just with the gatekeepers of. I heard a lot of, it's kind of between two chairs was a phrase that pecked at me for a while.
Was it heads between two chairs?
This kind of lands between two chairs. The idea is, are we going to put it in the graphic fiction?
Yeah, I was the first one to say, huh?
I know. But which I know. There are a lot of knee-jerk things. People's job is you got to classify it one way or the other, and something that's difficult to classify is usually like thanks, but no thanks.
Well, it's a very anachronistic element of old school publishing, right? Where they think in terms of a retail store and not a search algorithm, where it's like and word of mouth.
And you think like, it's my feeling was if we put it in front of somebody, they're gonna get it or they're not. And there are people who will stumble when it's going from a straight paragraph into paneled graphics, who are not going to get it. I feel like after the third or fourth time, though. The idea was always that the graphics weren't going to be ancillary. There weren't going to be something you could skip. The story would go right through them. I wanted the art to be really integrated in a way that you don't see in a lot of places. But I also wanted our story to have a lot of heft when it went right to the text. So yeah, it's a bit of an odd duck. I mean, we neither fish nor fowl. We heard a lot of that, and we're like, you know what? We think when people see it, they're going to get it, and that was more.
I always remember the joy of when I'd have one of those books, Treasure Island, that I could see in the middle of that book that there was pictures.
Yeah. You'd see the glossy
and
pages.
I wanted to get to them. Yeah. I did. And I somehow knew in my heart that I wasn't supposed to just go to them. It's not like the centerfold of Playboy. Let's just get right to it. Yeah. But, and you had to earn your way. But I was always, maybe this was the jock part of me, but I was always like, I wish there'd be more pictures. Because that always let you really imagine the duel on the beach, with what those guys had cutlasses and they were going to go and who was going to win. And there was something about that. And so, I kind of wanted more. I wanted, more of that. And I think, but the reality was when you came to those pictures, often you just stopped. And looked at it. You just stopped. And here it's not that same experience. You can stop and enjoy, but the story is going to travel through those pictures. So it's not just that you're feasting on it, although the drawing of Rick is that spectacular, and I think, but really the pictures are you're still in the middle of the story.
Yeah, it's a cool combo. I mean, I remember with my last book, decided to make multi-sections, illustrations, photographs, and I'd never done either before. Really, my previous two books, it's a huge undertaking. I mean, it's from a production standpoint, I can imagine it being quite challenging because when did Rick start on the illustrations? Was it after the primary text was done, or was it concurrent?
Yeah, well, in the interest of getting it in a sort of finite time frame, I think after the first chapter, we brought Rick in, and there's a sort of a interesting story behind that, our finding of Rick. But
Well, hey, I like
we got
interesting
time.
stories.
Well, I mean, look at, John, he said, look, John's a beautiful, drawer in himself, an illustrator. He's mentioned that and really good, but he understood that the volume of work that was going to be here was just unbelievable. It was epic.
Yeah.
It's epic. And I hope that people out there, however we've managed to bore them, go, the book is better than this interview, that at least on our part. I think Tim, you're doing great, but the book is really special. And it's a great thing to give yourself and to give a young friend. It's a stocking stuffer, if you will, but we knew, that this was going to be an amazing task to illustrate this. Probably should have been 4 guys, but he wanted somebody to be able to draw in the vein of Winsor McCay. Now, I don't know if you know who Winsor McCay is, and we've been to big giant book signings, and I always think I'm going to be blown away by the intellectuals, and usually only one of them out of 400 knows who Winsor McCay is. That always makes me happy, because my problem was, when John said, well, we got to get somebody that draws like Winsor McCay. If you're me, you go, then why don't we get Winsor McCay? Well, Winsor McCay's dead. He was, doing this in the 20s. He was really the father of this kind of work, if you will, or whatever. And, so John, I said, so how do we find this Winsor McCay? And John said, let's get him in Craigslist. And that's what we did. He put a ad in Craigslist. He threw out that bait, knowing that only a few, like the dog who can only hear a certain sound out there.
Yeah, no, that's genius.
Only a few people are going to know who Winsor McCay is. So that we knew the line out in front wasn't going to be that long. And out of that, great artists culled down to one fabulous artist. And Rick happened to be in between jobs. He thought he had a month to kill. And he ended up working on this for almost 3 years, did every bit of art on it, including the cover. It's really it's a jewel of a book.
No, it's a beautiful piece of work. I mean, and I haven't yet had the chance to read it, but it sort of combines a lot of elements and aspects or genres of storytelling that I find very appealing. And we were talking about the genre and the slotting, the categorization, which I'm really disillusioned by, in a sense, because, for instance, I mean, you have these books, and you were talking about age earlier. There's some fantastic books out there, whether it's, the Never-Ending Story or Philip Pullman's, his Dark Materials, I think it is, like The Golden Compass, where that's in the young adults section, which in my mind meant, oh, this is written for young adults. And I picked up the book and I had to look up probably 200 words, including a lot of nautical terminology. I was like, how can a 12-year-old read this? But this is great writing. It's really compelling. And I think the fact of the matter is that if you put something out there that is truthful in so much as it's what you wanted to write, that younger readers will rise to the challenge. If it's
That's right. There's no ceiling on who's going to be able to enjoy
you
this.
don't have to dumb it down.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to dig in. I assume people can find this everywhere in terms of Amazon.
I think so.
bookstores.
Barnes and Noble, Amazon,
The usual.
and I think and a lot of the independent bookstores, are picking it up. It's selling. And 6 days in, we were able to jump to the, New York Times bestseller, which was a kind of a surreal moment. And really, when you have partners, you're really glad for them. I was really glad for Rick and for John to be able to say that one day. I do think these guys you're going to be hearing about John into next century. That's what I believe. And I'm really glad that you gave us a chance to talk about this book.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can people find this online? I'm going to put all the show notes for those people listening. There'll be links to everything we've discussed, including the book, obviously, in the show notes at 4hourworkweek.com/podcast, all spelled out. But for those people who want to find it on social, on the web, where are the best places for them to look?
There is a welcome to the explorersguild.com that is set up by the publisher, and that has links there to not only the places you can buy it online, but also our various sort of social media feeds. I think there are, and I haven't got them memorized.
That's okay.
Really,
We also have our own. We created a website. What's it called?
well, we've got our Facebook thing, our Instagram.
What do you say? What do you call our Facebook thing?
You know,
I don't know.
That's the beauty of the internet.
But you know what it is? If you can find it out there, this is like a treasure hunt for everybody
like
listening.
Craigslist.
But if you find it, you're going to see exactly how we started. We have all our starting materials.
Oh, you do? Very cool.
And we did our own kind of
The making
internal
of.
interviews about our own process. So it's almost as long as the book now.
Yeah.
You know, you see our drawings. We
that's cool.
We do time lapse drawings.
Oh, nice. I
so
love
if you really
seeing
want to see how this book
the
came
behind the scenes.
together, I don't even know where my own website is.
Well, that's the beauty of the show notes. So, folks, I'll provide links to all of that. But Kevin, do you have a few minutes to do just a handful of more sort of rapid fire questions?
Yeah. My lawyer's standing by, and my other lawyer's standing. I have a legion of lawyers, so go ahead, shoot.
All right, we have. I'm getting the green flag.
Tim's eyes got big for a second, and they just normally don't do that.
The good news is my eyes are already kind of fishbowl size, so they start off big.
Well, you keep wanting to go outside like me on the piano. It looks fun here.
Oh, it's gorgeous outside. So everybody, take a look at the show notes. We will come back to that before we take off. Just a handful of questions here, Kevin, and obviously very much appreciate the time. When you think of the word successful, who is the first person who comes to mind, and why?
The first person, I think Steven Spielberg's really successful. You know, and I think Thomas Jefferson was successful. You know, I guess I'm not leaping to the giants of today. But, you know, as you drill down on that list, you know, then you start to go to Bezos and you start to go to Jobs and you go to Bill Gates. Really successful. Really, found their way. But I guess at first blush, I don't know. I just said Spielberg here's a guy that's probably not so dominant in his personality that has been able to do everything he's wanted to do.
Is there anything else about how he's led his career or otherwise that you particularly admire, or?
I don't think Steven has limited himself. I think early on people tried to say, oh, we can only make this kind of story. This guy is really gifted. He's a really gifted filmmaker. And I think he has challenged almost all genres. He really has. From Sugarland Express to, I think, to Minority Report and to these different things, besides the obvious ones, that really changed the way people look at film, Jaws and E.T. and Close Encounters were giant movies. And I think that he has really bounced around. I think he's been incredibly successful.
A very diverse canon of work.
I do.
Do you have any favorite documentaries?
Yeah. It was called Coney Island.
Coney Island.
Narrated by David McCullum, and it blew me away. It blew me away to finally understand that Coney Island was so much more than just roller coasters. It was the most popular place on the earth at the turn of the century. It was bigger than Paris. It was bigger than Chicago, and it was because all the inventors were going there. They were allowed to do things. The medical profession, which wouldn't allow this guy who said, hey, I think I know how to keep babies alive. I can heat them, my incubation. And they just ran him out on town. Coney Island said, do it here. And so he did. And it was the most popular exhibit. You could walk in and see these babies that were kept alive. The great Edison, all these guys were hanging around Coney Island. We think of it as in terms of the warriors, like decrepit, roller coasters and things falling apart. Coney Island, there was three competing parks that were all as big as Disneyland. Luna Park, Coney Island, and it was the place to be in the world. And so look this documentary up, Coney Island, narrated by David McCullum. I was blown away by it.
What are your, when do you go to bed and wake up in the morning?
When do I go to bed?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a regular schedule of when I go to bed, but when I wake up is pretty specific. The alarm starts going off and 1, 2, then the dog, 3 people end up in bed. There's 5 people in bed, dog, and now the cat coexists there too. It's really a problem. My kids are really hot, way too hot to be around. It's like warm. The bed's not comfortable. It's just too hot. I want out.
What time is that?
That's probably around 7. And we got to be in the car at 10 to 8, or I got to sign this crummy little sheet that says why you're late. Our name is in it so much at their school. They all go to the same school. And you know, there's tears before they get there sometimes because they're 5, 6, and 7. There's backpacks that are like all over. My kids are just like me. They can't keep their shit together. It's everywhere.
Tools and baseballs and
it's just
all over.
everywhere. It's just everywhere. And when you say, where's your sweater? They'll say it's in the car, which is a bullshit answer. But I hope people understand that my life is just as cluttered as theirs probably. But, my wife and I both, if I'm not making a movie, and I haven't made one since last November, just taking a year into my own way, we drive together. We did this morning. We drive them and we drop them off. I don't know why. You know, I look like a dorky dad in the seat, and I get out and give them their backpacks, and my wife's driving, and it's like, I don't know how that looks, but it's how my life plays.
Do you have any, well, this is I suppose you could choose either one of these questions. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be? Do you have any bad habit or bad habits that you're currently working to get, to overcome in any way?
Yeah, I wish I was more disciplined, you know, about wanting, you know, to work out because I need to, but I hate it. I hate thinking about the clothes you have to wear if you go to a gym. I hate the idea of picking up lead. It makes no sense to me. I don't want to run with headphones. If I'm going to run, I want to make sure I'm watching the news. I'm not disciplined about taking care of my body. I wish I could. But exercise is just a drag, man.
I'll do some thinking on that. I might have some ideas for you. Is it true that you've done all or most of your riding, equestrian work in your movies?
Yeah, I've done most of it. I've always had stunt guys in my movies, and they have done some really, really difficult things. But because it's important for me to put the camera as close to the action as possible, I've done most of my riding. But I have been covered by excellent stuntmen. I've had stuntmen make me look faster and make the jump look farther. But I have put myself in the middle of stampedes. I don't know why, with no reins and going. So I like that part of it. I always think, who wouldn't want to go after the bad guy yourself? Why do you just automatically give that up? You know, I heard Roger Moore, who I think is great, but used to say, "Oh no, that's too far. I don't do that." And it might have been just a step over. No, I'm not going to wrestle here. You know, I kind of wanted that. You know, I wanted to jump on it and save the day. Who wouldn't want to swing, you know, from rope to rope in Robin Hood? Wouldn't want to do that? I had a stunt guy help me, but whenever I can, I do it.
Yeah. Are there any particular historical figures that you identify with?
Not that I identify with, but, you know, Mark Twain is someone I think about a lot.
He's amazing. Yeah.
Lincoln, I think a lot about, you know, and Jefferson, you heard me mention him, is somebody I think a lot about. You know, I would have liked to have met Crazy Horse. I would have liked to have met, Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce. I would have liked to known, you know, how fucked up they must have felt about at the end going, Jesus, we're just going to have to fight for our life. And we've been here for thousands of years. And who are you people that would make me run for my life and watch my brothers and sisters and my children die? Who the fuck are you? This used to be the Garden of Eden. What happened?
And, I know we don't have time to get into it today, but, Tatanka, the story of the bison.
Mm-hmm.
That, can you describe that briefly for people so they can sort of look into it themselves?
It's a very humble little information center. I had bigger ideas for it, that it could be a hotel, that it could ultimately be a museum. If there's anyone out there, entrepreneurial enough, I'm an entrepreneurial guy, but I've put about as much as I can. If anyone thinks there's something missing in this country, like where the first people went, especially on the plains, I have a place where we could make a great museum together. And, I fear that I've long chased everybody away from this interview a long time ago.
Oh, no.
But if there's somebody
still
out
people
there,
listening.
there's somebody out there that burning to keep that story, which is our story, alive, I have the place to put it. And along with it, I'll put these incredible statues, the story of the bison, these bronzes that are amazing.
Sounds spectacular.
Right there in Rapid City, right there in actually Deadwood. So, I need a partner now. I've done all the heavy lifting I can, but if somebody is in love with our history, then, and has a way through money and love of the history to keep it alive, you come be my partner.
So I will, do you recall your Twitter handle offhand? That's
My what handle?
Your Twitter,
I don't
your
do Twitter.
designation. Okay. All right. We don't do Twitter. I will,
I don't do Facebook either, though I'm told I have an account.
okay. So I will do some detective work and put in the show notes,
Thanks.
perhaps how you can track down, Mr. Costner.
I just need one guy. I just need
just one guy.
I don't want a bunch of partners. I need one guy who goes, I like this stuff and I got a ton of money and, we are going to remember this stuff. I'm going to do it in a really classy way.
If you could put one billboard anywhere, what would it say? What would you have on the billboard? Not the book, but just a general.
I'd put it in Washington. I'd say no term limit. No
term limit.
Yeah. I'd say enough. You know what? We don't need more experience. We need a work ethic that by the time you're done there, you're so tired you don't want to go back after one term or two terms. You're done after two. Experience is not helping us. It's clogging us up.
Two more. That's it. What advice would you give to your 30-year-old self?
To my 30-year-old self? I'm going to say something. We talked about the conservative upbringing I had, the idea that you were going to do this. This is how a man makes a living. My turning point was at 22 when I said, I'm going to be an actor and I don't care what anybody else thinks. So I wish I could have got that advice earlier, but I had to actually give it to myself. So, what would I give myself at 30? I think, I would have stayed in more control of the projects that I lent my name to.
Good advice. Because I'm 38 now. That's the conclusion I just came to last year in retrospect. And last question is, do you have any asks or requests of everybody listening to this? Is there anything you'd like them to take away with them? Obviously, everybody will see in the show notes, and elsewhere the Explorers Guild. But is there any message or any kind of parting comment or suggestion that you'd like to make?
Well, I obviously, whatever audience is that it's out there supporting you likes the long form of communication. And I hope your audience understands that we like it too. You know, the thing that's hard for us is to go on these nighttime television shows and come up with some small pat joke and then you introduce your movie and then you're done. So this has been good for me. And I do want to return to the book for those who have waited through this interview with us. This was something that I didn't know that was going to be in my life. And this book, which I hope you read, it turned out better than I thought it ever could. It was really something that I'm proud to be a part of. And I hope you not only get the book, but the book does something to you, which I think all stories or art can do, which is, and it's something we all have in common. I know that when I read something great, the first thing I want to do is share it. I know that when I hear a great song, the first thing I want to do is share it. If I hear a joke, the first thing I want to do is share it. I hope it's the same with movies. And I hope that when you read Explorers Guild, your first instinct will be, I need to share this. And that really is, what I hope, you know, and my advice out there for people who get so completely overwhelmed by Christmas, it's a great way to stuff your stocking. Take the thinking out of things. You don't know what to get somebody, get them the Explorers Guild. Let them go on their own journey.
It's a beautiful book, and you're a wonderful creator. I really appreciate all the time.
Thank you.
And I'm a huge fan of your work, so please continue to create and collaborate with other people. And I'm waving to John just a few feet away also. Thank you. I appreciate you guys making the time. And to everyone listening, you can find the show notes, links to everything at 4hourworkweek.com, all spelled out, /podcast, or just go to 4hourworkweek.com and click on podcast. And as always, thank you for listening. Hey guys, this is Tim again. Just a few more things before you take off. Number one, this is 5 Bullet Friday. Do you want to get a short email from me? Would you enjoy getting a short email from me every Friday that provides a little morsel of fun before the weekend? And 5 Bullet Friday is a very short email where I share the coolest things I've found or that I've been pondering over the week. That could include favorite new albums that I've discovered. It could include gizmos and gadgets and all sorts of weird shit that I've somehow dug up in the world of the esoteric as I do. It could include favorite articles that I've read and that I've shared with my close friends, for instance. And it's very short. It's just a little tiny bite of goodness before you head off for the weekend. So if you want to receive that, check it out. Just go to 4hourworkweek.com. That's 4hourworkweek.com, all spelled out, and just drop in your email, and you will get the very next one. And if you sign up, I hope you enjoy it.